The Oracle of Luna is a podcast with me, Bridget Engels, as your host. Here we have conversations with real live, present-day goddesses who are actively and courageously doing their magical work in the world. Each episode is a bewitching journey with relevant discussions on topics such as Wiccan pagan spirituality, writing, culture, magical practices, art, ritual, and the craft in its many forms. Merry meet and welcome to the Oracle of Luna. Today we have a very special guest. I'm super excited. We have Madame Pamita. She is a Ukrainian diaspora witch, author of Baba Yaga's Book of Witchcraft, Slavic Magic from the Witch of the Woods, and she's a podcaster, and she's the owner of the online store Parlour of Wonders. Welcome, Madame Pamita.
Oh, I'm so glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So how are you today?
I am great. It's a new moon when we're recording this, and it's a special time. I love working with the moon, and so it's a special day for me. It's a work day for me, of course, but yeah, I'm just very much in that flow of making magic today. So this is perfect.
Yeah, exciting. It's a good day to start new intentions. And so my intention right now is to kind of get to know you. And my listeners are very excited and interested in what you do. So let's just start right in.
Wonderful.
So let's see, how did your spiritual journey as a Ukrainian witch and how did your interest in Slavic folk magic begin?
Well, I grew up in a magical household, which is always fun to be able to tell people because not all of us have had that opportunity to grow up in a house where magic was done. Now, that being said, it was Catholic magic, but we were still doing magic. I just thought that was normal religion and normal Catholicism.
Yeah.
But it turns out that many of the things that we did as little practices in the home go back to pagan times. Now, this is very typical for Slavic magic, that there's a blending of pagan practices and Greek Orthodox practices, Eastern Orthodox practices. And this shows up, and also in other countries like Poland, where there's predominance of Roman Catholicism, we see that magic being blended in, the paganism being blended in with the more traditional, more modern religions. So I grew up in a house where we did, divination. We did, my mom bought me my first tarot deck when I was 10 years old. We had Ouija boards around the house. We had all these things that my mom just didn't really, she thought they were fine. This was something that was part of her practice. So I grew up in a magical household, and then
was this in the US or in Ukraine?
Yeah, I was born here. My mom was also born here, but my grandparents came from a part of Ukraine called Halichna. It was called Galicia back in the olden days. It was part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, but it was Ukrainian, Polish, Rusin. There was all kinds of different ethnicities in that area. And in a situation very similar to what we're seeing today, when Russian army was coming in and conscripting young men and sort of wreaking havoc in that area, the area was very much under dispute. My grandparents came over to Philadelphia and brought their practices with them. So
nice.
Yeah.
So they brought over their Slavic folk magic with them, it sounds like.
Absolutely. So they were farming people, rural people, agrarian culture. And this is where we find the old pagan folk practices really we're able to coexist is in the rural areas and in the people that are more, it's folk magic. So people that are keeping the old folk ways alive. That means old songs, old stories and fairy tales, legends, and of course, practices of magic.
Yeah.
All kinds of things from embroidery to cooking food in certain ways, doing divination at certain times of year. My grandmother was a healer. We would call it in Ukrainian as naharka. It wasn't called, you wouldn't call somebody a witch, even though they were doing witchcraft, which was
Yeah.
sort of, it's kind of like how it is in, I think we're seeing in Mexican culture, for example, people using the word bruja, but up
Mhm.
until, a decade ago or a couple decades ago, bruja was really some way of saying like an evil witch, right? Now people
Uh-huh.
are reclaiming that word. So vidma, which is the Ukrainian word for witch, was sort of considered an insult or a bad way. You wouldn't want
Right.
to say that to someone, but I think it's being reclaimed now. I call myself a vidma, but it's being reclaimed. But my grandmother would never have called herself a witch. She would have
Right.
called herself a healer, which is
Sure.
Znaharka, is a healer. So she was practicing doing rituals like pouring wax into water to divine where a curse was coming from, and then healing the person of the curse. She created motanki, which are magical spirit dolls. They're kind of dolls that house your ancestor spirits. And she made those. She made one for my mom when my mom was ill as a young child. So these practices are very familiar, sort of being remembered actually by Ukrainian people, because remember that when people leave in a diaspora, they bring their practices with them.
Right.
Sometimes they get melded in whatever culture they land in, and sort of some things get lost, I do think, when that happens. But in a case like the case of Ukraine, where we had 80 years of Soviet domination and Soviet rule, where all religion and any religious practices were being banned, outlawed, all kinds of horrific things happened to Ukrainian people over those 80 years, and including the suppression of these practices because they were blended with Eastern Orthodoxy. They were considered religious, even though they were older than Eastern Orthodox religion.
Mm-hmm.
So the diaspora Ukrainians, there's almost like a communication and a sharing back and forth between diaspora Ukrainians who came over here and the Ukrainians who stayed, because a lot of times they lost their practices as well, in a
Right.
different way. So I'm finding a lot is very, very interesting. Unlike some other cultures, I'm finding a lot of big, huge support from the Ukrainian community who did not leave, because they don't have this information any more than Ukrainian Americans or Ukrainian Canadians have it.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting situation. But yeah,
Yeah.
that's my in sort of my story of going back to my
Yeah.
Ukrainian past. So
Yeah, and I
yeah.
love that you're remembering and keeping the culture and the folk magic alive. I love that so much. And so let's talk a little bit about Baba Yaga and your amazing book, Baba Yaga's Book of Witchcraft, Slavic Magic from the Witch of the Woods. So what motivated you to write your book?
I am a spiritualist and I work with spirits a lot. I have for many decades worked as a spiritualist. So that means contacting and connecting to my ancestor spirits and connecting to other spirits, deities, and so on. So Baba Yaga, I always knew about her. We would call her Baba Yaga. That pronunciation, Baba Yaga, is a Russian pronunciation, and we
Hmm.
use it in America. That's how she's most well known here. But in Ukrainian would say Baba Yaha or Yetzi Baba, or all kinds of, there's all kinds of names. So
Yeah.
you'll sometimes see Baba Yaga being described as a Russian spirit, And she definitely exists in Russian lore and legend, but she exists in the legend and lore of all of the Slavic countries. It's just that
Yeah.
the Russian Alexander Afanasyev was the first one to document the stories, write them down, just like the Brothers Grimm went around and recorded Grimm's fairy tales. They didn't write those stories. They were going around and collecting these old folk tales from German people. So Afanasyev saw that they were having great success doing that. So he started doing that with Russian fairy tales, and Baba Yaga was a character in many of these tales. So, but she exists with different names going throughout all the Slavic countries. Serbia, we have Baba Roga, and like I said, in Ukraine, there's Baba Yaga and Yedzi Baba and all kinds of other names as well.
Yeah.
So she's exists in all these countries. She's a character who appears in stories. There's no stories that make her the central figure. There's that she doesn't show up that way, but she shows up in stories as either, sometimes she shows up as an ogreish kind of character who's going to eat the hero or the heroine.
Yeah.
Sometimes she shows up as somebody who tests the hero or the heroine of the story. And then sometimes she shows up as someone who's just giving a gift or information to the heroine or the hero of the story. And when we look back at that, we can see that the older stories, she shows up as more of this ambivalent figure who lives out in the woods in a house, a little hut, one-room hut on chicken legs. It walks around on chicken legs, and she flies around in a mortar and pestle. And so in the older stories, she shows up as sort of this character who's the helper or the tester. And it's sort of in the newer stories, I would say the post-Christian transformation of people moving toward Christianity, that she shows up as an evil ogre character.
Yeah.
But she's very, very old. She goes back to pre-written history, ancient times, as the keeper of the forest, the goddess who is protecting the forest, protecting the animals of the forest, and is also the initiator to teaching you the ways of magic. So that's how she shows up in my book, as like the tester of the little girl.
Yeah, and so she's a crone goddess, and she moves between the world of the living and the world of the dead. And it seems as if her hut, her magical hut in the forest, is some kind of gateway to the other world.
Absolutely,
I'm interpreting it. And you know, with the fence of skulls and, you know, the chicken legs, it's like a magical living hut that is a gateway.
I think for people that aren't familiar with her, the closest thing that we would be familiar with in American culture would be like the witch in Hansel and Gretel, who's going to eat the children, put the children in the oven and eat them. She sometimes shows up in stories like that. And that is a very interesting concept, because in Ukrainian magic, the peach, the wood stove, every house, every little hut would have a giant wood stove. Sometimes that wood stove would take up a quarter of the space in the house. But the wood stove and the fire were considered the home of the ancestors. This is really, 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 really old belief systems. We see documentation also of this kind of belief showing up in many cultures, not just in Ukrainian culture or Slavic culture, that the idea that the hearth or the fire was a place where spirits could enter. That's why you'll see images of witches flying up the chimney. And these are in stories from like Victorian times and earlier. You'll hear of witches flying up the chimney. It's because the hearth was this gateway into the spirit realm or into the spirit world, including the world of the dead. Of course, that's where spirits are, the world of the dead. But it's not really a spooky thing. So when we see the idea, the concept of, oh, I'm going to put the children in the oven, we might look at that story and go, well, she's just going to be a cannibal and eat these kids. But from a deeper perspective of this story that's being handed down and passing down the wisdom of the pagan times and the ancient times, we see this as she's introducing the hero or the heroine to the world of spirit, or connecting them to the world of spirit. So there's very much hidden messages in all these aspects of her story. Yeah.
And she's she seems to be somewhat of a shaman, and she's also like the Kaliaka transformation goddess, the crone goddess, who leads us through the transformation to the into the land of the dead, or in through the land of the living into the land of the dead, into the other realms. She's just very complex, actually.
And you're really right on the nose when you say Kaliak, because actually there's a deep history of intertwined belief systems between Celtic belief systems, Druidic belief systems, and ancient Slavic practices, because the ancient Celts actually originated very near Eastern Europe and migrated through Eastern Europe on their way over to Ireland and Scotland and Wales. So
Yeah.
it's very, very interesting. We find things, in my research, I find things and I'm like, wait a minute, that's a Celtic thing. We know a little bit about, Celtic druidry, I would say, through Romans recording it. Of course, they're outsiders. They're recording it through their lens. It's not accurate. But the same thing we find with Greeks recording information about the Slavic practices, and they didn't write them down either.
Yeah.
Very, very similar practices. So when I think we see a lot of correspondences with Baba Yaga and a goddess like Kaliak, or other goddesses even in Germany, which is where the Celts went through. We see Frau Purkta, and so on. So this old crone who's a tough cookie, and is also very, very wise, very extremely powerful, is we see her in a lot of different cultures, not just in Eastern European culture.
And the character, I'm not going to pronounce it correctly. I already know. Vasilina.
That's right.
She appears in the beginning in the chapters of your folk tales within your book. Why is she so important? And can we talk a little bit about her?
Sure. So this story that is woven throughout the book, there's a little fairy tale that sort of leads you into understanding the magic and the context and the place of the magic. So I could say, for example, here's what happens at a crossroads, and this is the magic you do at the crossroads, and blah, blah, blah. But if you don't, it gives us context of understanding the interaction of everyday people in this magical place, that, let's say, in the crossroads, for example. So the story is based on a story called Vasilisa the Wise, or Vasilisa the Fair, or Vasilisa the Beautiful. There's all kinds of different names for it, but Vasilina is the Ukrainian version of the name. Vasilisa would be a Russian name. Vasilina is a Ukrainian name. So it didn't really occur to me until after I wrote it, but I looked at it and I said, oh, we're the ones, we can't really identify with Baba Yaga. I mean, we might identify with Baba Yaga, but she's such a powerful being and a far superior magician to any of us.
Yes, a force of nature, really.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, she's sort of beyond humanity. I mean, she's human-like, but she's sort of beyond humanity. So in a story, you identify with a character. And so Vasilina, who goes to meet Baba Yaga and gets initiated by Baba Yaga, really represents us as the reader, as we're going through an initiation. And if you go through the book, you are going through an initiation. Just by reading the book, you're initiated into that world of understanding Baba Yaga and understanding her magic and learning her magic. But at the end, I don't know if this is a spoiler. If you don't want to know the ending of the story, then stop, pause, or fast forward. But at the end, Vasilina then becomes a witch, and she's like the village witch, and she's showing the children and teaching the children just like she was taught by Baba Yaga. Well, the book is supposed to take you on that journey yourself, to empower you so that you can do this very special, unique form of magic like Baba Yaga, so that you can become a Baba Yaga, whether you're male, female, non-binary, or whatever. It isn't about the gender. It's about the archetype, right?
Yes. So, and the heroine's journey, or heroine's journey. Yeah,
exactly. So that's why. So she's our touch point of learning, like you're going into the book knowing nothing about magic, and as you follow her story and follow her and meet Baba Yaga and work with Baba Yaga, it's like you're doing it, you're working with her, right?
Right.
So that's
Yeah.
why she shows up, and
Yeah.
that's what this
Okay.
story is based on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At first, I thought she was maybe the same person, like, the uninitiated Baba Yaga, and then she becomes Baba. Well, it kind of is. It's like two sides of the same coin kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's in any initiation, you have to start out as a beginner who knows nothing. I mean, that's what an initiation, you
Yeah.
learn something, you get
Sure.
tested. And I really see the spirit of Baba Yaga herself. I mean, working with a living spirit, that's what I do as a spiritualist. She's an initiator and a tester. And so for me, she tested me by having me write this book. So back to your question, like, why did I write this book? It's because the spirits, my grandmother's spirits, my ancestor spirits, my Baba Yaga spirit, were all pushing me to do it. And so I'm like, whenever a spirit asks me to do something, I do it because
Yeah.
there's a magical result. And in this
Right.
case, the magical result was 3 years after I started this book comes out exactly at the time when Ukraine is in everybody's
Yes.
news
In
feed.
February, right? February.
Right? Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
Oh,
amazing. So what a crazy, it's not a coincidence. I don't see it as a coincidence. What it is spirit working through someone.
mm-hmm.
So that's what this book is. It's just a pure gift of love for people who want to learn about this magic, whether they have the heritage or don't have the heritage, but are curious about it or whatever. And a way to honor this beautiful spirit of Baba Yaga, and to honor my grandmother and all of my ancestors who taught my grandmother and passed this knowledge down through my family to me. So
Ah, it's beautiful and so powerful, and at the same time, you're helping to support the people of Ukraine with your magic and your ancestors' magic.
yeah, all the time, all the time. I'm doing something for Ukraine every day. And I encourage
Good.
people to do something for Ukraine. It can be small. It can be following an account on social media, or liking something, or commenting, or giving a comment of support. All of that, those little drops add up and are creating this the light or
A
good
web.
winning out. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, light and good. We're supporting light and good winning out over evil, and that's really what this is about. So yeah.
That's amazing. And so, you also do tarot reading, candle magic, and you also have a couple podcasts, I believe, and a
Mm-hmm.
YouTube channel. So you're super busy
Yeah.
lady. And so, how do you integrate your folk magic, Slavic magic, into your tarot reading or candle magic? Is it flavored with the
Yeah, it's
Slavic magic?
sort of. I mean, like, I think, I come from a folk magic background. I was born in here in the States. I'm American, but I'm Ukrainian American. So it kind of will show up in small ways and big ways. So for example, I have things that are purely Ukrainian magic. Like I have a pokut, which is a ancestor altar that you place in a certain part of your home. I talk about this in the book. Place it in
Yeah.
a certain part of the home. It's a place that's very traditional for honoring the ancestors. You can also honor your deities there. So I have a pokut. I have motanki, which are the spirit dolls all around. I've got them at my
Yeah.
business, at home, everywhere. My ancestors everywhere. I have ancestor altars. So those are the places that the Ukrainian magic really shows up. In candle magic, sometimes things get integrated into it a little bit. We have a really cute candle. I'm going to give you a little sneak peek. We're going to have a really cute candle that's coming out at the end of the year in December that is Ukrainian based, and that's going to be amazing.
Oh,
But I think of the candle magic as sort of being more generic and universal. Really, candle magic is such a beautiful practice that you
yes.
can bring your own flavor to. So if your flavor is Celtic, you can bring it to that. If your flavor is African diaspora, religions, African traditional religions, you can bring it that. If you have Asian spiritual practices, you can bring it to candle magic. So candle magic is really universal. It's
Sure.
such a universal thing that we can, it's almost like non-denominational.
And we
So,
can tailor it to our special magical needs.
of
And
course. Yeah. Yeah. It's really very, very flexible. And we see light, fire, and candles being used across the board in every
oh,
culture.
yeah.
Fire is magical in every culture. And that's what candle magic is fire magic. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And what's the name of your candle magic book?
It's called the Book of Candle Magic.
Okay.
Simple enough. The Book of Candle Magic, and I have a book on tarot called Madame Pamita's Magical Tarot, which is going to go
Mm.
into a second edition. So we're gonna have a second
Oh,
edition of that book.
fabulous.
Candle Magic book that's on its seventh printing, I think now, or maybe sixth or seventh printing. And Baba Yaga's Book of Witchcraft is, I think, on its third or fourth printing now. So yeah.
Oh, congratulations. So let's see. We kind of talked about embroidery, or maybe we didn't touch on embroidery. That's another folk, Slavic folk type of magic. Matanka, we got the food. Food is very enchanted and very powerful. Fire, incantations. There's just so much packed into this book. Listeners, I've really enjoyed it, and I pick it up and kind of ponder it, and then I'm actually going to make a matanka myself. But there's so much in this book about wonderful Slavic folk magic, and so I really encourage everybody to go out and buy it. And also, how can people get in touch with you?
Well, on all the social medias, my name is Madame Pamita, MADAME PAMITA. No spaces, no numbers, no underscores, none of that. If you see that, that isn't me. It's somebody pretending to be me. So my most active platforms are YouTube. I have tons and tons and tons of videos up on YouTube and Instagram. Those are where I'm most active. I do have a Facebook, but I don't really go much over there. So, and I have a Twitter, but I just use it to complain to corporations about their bad practices. So
Somebody's got to do it, right?
exactly. That's the only thing I think Twitter makes sense for me in that way. So and I have my website, parlourwonders.com, which you can find me, all the tons and tons and tons of free information over there. My podcasts are Baba Yaga's Magic, which is the Slavic Magic podcast, and also Magic and the Law of Attraction, which is a general magic, really about how magic and intention and thought blend together. It's really kind of interesting because I am very invested in like new thought and law of attraction and all of those things, but I see that there's a gap in that they don't talk about how to support, and magic is our support for our intentions. When we do a candle spell, it's like we have these allies with us. So that's the thing I always thought was missing from general law of attraction stuff, is they don't really have the magic part down. So that's why my podcast is there. It talks a little bit about both. So
oh, good. Oh, well, it'll be really fun to do a little bit more exploration on you, because you really, all your magical offerings are just you have so much, and I'm just like, we're just barely scratching the surface today, folks. But I encourage you to check out Madame Pamita's social media links and website. And one last question: do you have any like upcoming classes or events, upcoming workshops that you want to discuss?
Yeah, so every month on the first Sunday of the month, I have what I call my first Sunday witchcraft workshop. So I host a workshop that's usually about an hour and a half to 2 hours long. It's a deep dive into a specific topic or a specific practice. I've been doing a lot of Slavic magic classes in that for this year. And then I also teach at Catland Books on the last Wednesday of the month, and we were teaching sort of general magic over there. And in the past, I'd taught Slavic magic. Now I'm back teaching Slavic magic with them.
Is that online?
These are all virtual classes. So,
okay.
So you can if you can get on Zoom, you can get into these classes. And even if you don't want, or the timing doesn't work for you, they're all recorded and you can watch them later. So I have on my webpage, which I have a link to get to it quickly. If you go to witchcraftworkshops.com, it'll take you right over to my workshop page, which has all kinds of things. I have a tarot series that's coming up this fall. I've got those once monthly classes. I've got the class that I'm teaching, and I'm going to be at Northwest Tarot Symposium in a couple weeks. So yeah, so we've got lots of things going on. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. And also, do you have your own tarot deck?
No,
Well?
I just have
Okay.
no. Oh, well, actually, it's not my tarot deck, but I wrote a book. I wrote the Little White Book for Stephanie Buscema's Silver Acorn Tarot, which is coming out this fall, and it is absolutely gorgeous. It wasn't my idea, it wasn't my design, but I got the very huge pleasure of being able to write the book for her. So it's not
Okay.
my deck that's coming out, but it's I contributed the book.
Yeah. Okay, wonderful. Well, we have really enjoyed, or I've really enjoyed speaking with you, and I know many of the listeners were asking, and I'm so happy that we were able to chat today.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Bridget. It's really been
Yeah.
a super big pleasure being here and talking about Baba Yaga and Slavic magic. It's a super passion of mine, so I could talk
Yes.
all day about it.
Yeah. And if we had all day, believe me, we would talk about it. She's a very interesting and powerful crone goddess, and I'm definitely going to do more exploration on her myself. So yeah, that's about it. Thank you again, and blessed be. I hope you enjoyed this conversation. And if you did, please consider supporting my podcast via PayPal on my PayPal me/Oracle of Luna podcast. The link is in the show notes. And also feel free to share the magic of my podcast with others. Thank you, and blessed be.